So when I put together presentations on this particular topic, I end up thinking back through the years that I've been doing this, and I typically think about the families that have come through my office asking for help with their challenging kids. And as I was putting this one together, one family in particular just kind of was on my mind, so I figured I'd share a little bit about that family. And the thing that I think makes this family stand out to me, it's interesting, not so much because this particular family has any outlying circumstances or anything all that unusual, but I think it's more so because of how common their experience was. This family, it's two parents and their son, came to my office a while back, and just kind of that look on their faces. Child was really despondent, just so frustrated, down. You could tell you kind of given up, didn't think anything was going to help, but the parents were similar. Dad in particular was very angry, very resentful, very frustrated. And that's not uncommon. If you're dealing with challenging kids, you have those days, or it can get to the point where most days are like that, depending on what you're dealing with. The sense that we've tried everything. That was what they kept saying over and over again. We've tried everything. And so it kind of becomes this task where it's, hey, we've tried everything. You need to figure out what's wrong with my kid. Because obviously, I gotta tell you all these things my kid's doing. There must be something wrong with my kid. That's really, really common. The strategies I'm gonna talk about tonight are not my own. They're Dr. Ross Green's, and the approach is called collaborative and proactive solutions. And so a lot of what I'm going to be talking about is based on this strategy. And really, it's not, I wouldn't consider it a technique. Think about that as I'm talking. It's not something you're going to try, it's a mindset. Things that you do naturally because you're shifting your mindset. They're not my own, but they've allowed me the privilege of helping so many kids and families kind of regain that sense that there's hope, that things can get better. My own child helps me with him every day. I have one that's challenging, one that's not. So it kind of takes, whenever you have at least one that's not, it kind of takes a little bit of pressure off, like maybe I didn't create this. That helps. If you've registered and you ended up listening to the prerequisite podcast, then you kind of understand that the groundwork that was laid in that podcast is what helps with the mind shift that's going to be really critical. For you to be able to kind of lay down those conventional methods, the things that people tell you all the time, and if you are somebody who has a challenging kid, those don't work. Like, no matter how much I try what you're saying to me or what these other people are doing that seems to work, that's not working for me. And so once we can kind of lay down the idea that we can do this differently, it doesn't have to be this kind of behavior management way, really big shifts start to happen. Really cool things start to happen. And that's why, probably the last reason that this particular family stands out to me is, I was prepared for them the second session. That usually happens is I get to see where they're at the first time, and then the second time, they're depleted, they're stressed out, so I can't be depleted and stressed out, so I was mentally ready for them. And what I saw the second time was mind-blowing. It was the moment that I live for, the ones that keep me coming back and doing this job every day, even as frustrating as it can be, because I want people to be successful. The kid was smiling, looked so much lighter. The dad was almost in tears the whole time he was talking. Was a completely different person. And the mom was just about the same. And the only difference was that they had gone onto Ross Green's website and watched the videos that I asked them to watch. I almost felt like they weren't going to do it based on how upset and angry they were. I was like, oh, they're going to need some time. But I was like, look, just do this. Just go look at these videos, try to understand what it is we're going to do here, and then we'll start next time. And so when they came in, the mindset, the shift in mindset perspective that they had about their kid and about why he was challenging was nothing short of moving to me. And so that, if you haven't listened to the podcast, just make sure you do that, but you can also get caught up if you're browsing around the website, browsing the website, so I'll make sure that as you go. Let's see how this goes. Okay, so, I'm standing in front of okay. Try to read it on here. So, I want you to think about some of these questions, and after I'm done talking, maybe kind of go back and revisit some of these ideas. You know, do you have it in you to do what I'm going to be asking you to do? Is the way you see your child's behavior preventing you from making progress? Are you focused on being proactive rather than reactive? That's going to be a big part of this. We get really caught up in the heat of the moment when things are happening and we feel like, I have to react right now. And so I'm going to be asking you to shift that. How well can you really listen to and believe what your child's saying? That's one of the most difficult things. When we look into information gathering, we try to figure out what's standing in our kids' way, they're going to give us some answers that we're going to so badly want to come back with, that's ridiculous, or that's not true, and stuff like that. Can you actually find some truth, like find that grain of truth in what your kid's saying so that you can run with it? And can you resist trying to solve the behavior while it's happening? That's, kind of that proactive approach. What you do versus the way you are. This is, I really want you to think about this, because when we start to get really frustrated and we start to see our kid as challenging, it starts to become, we shift away from the things that our child's doing, and it becomes who they are. And they're bad. They start to feel bad. And when you send them that message that, well, this is who you are, you're a challenging kid. You always do this. You're always, like this. You can never just do what I ask. They start to develop, well, this is just an idea of, this is how I am. And that's hard to unravel, so we want to be careful with that. Just want you to think about some of those things. Just a really quick recap of the podcast, just in case you didn't listen to it, it's fine. So this whole philosophy is based on the idea that kids will do well as they can, not the popular kind of conventional wisdom that kids will do well if they choose to. A lot of what you're typically told to do with challenging kids is relying on conventional wisdom that kids are being defiant because they're manipulative, they're coercive, they just want what they want when they want it. And so if they chose to, they could just do better. So our role is limited to making them want to do better. And the thing is, if I can behave, why would I ever choose to not behave? It doesn't make any sense. There's no payoff to that. If I can just do what I need to be doing, I'm gonna just do it. It's easy enough. No skin on my back, I'm just gonna do it. And so that's, this limit testing, manipulative, why would I do that if I had a better way? I'm gonna tell you a little bit in a second why your kids are not manipulative and they're not coercive, why they just can't be, it's too sophisticated. But we have 40 to 50 years of research in the neurosciences that tells us, time and time again, without a shadow of a doubt, that kids want to do well. They're intrinsically motivated. And so if we give them the ability to do well, that's what they're gonna do. So behavior's a red flag. Anytime you see behavior, red flag, oh, the demands right now exceed this child's ability to meet them. They either don't have the skills or there's a problem standing in their way. And so instead of, your role being, oh, I gotta make them behave, your role becomes, oh, I gotta solve this with them. I gotta figure out what's going on, what's standing in their way, and we gotta figure out a different way. We're gonna work as a team on this. So again, Rostering Collaborative and Proactive Solutions, it's www.livesinthebalance.org. Tons of helpful information. I would, after this, while you're trying it this week, I would use the website as a crutch because it has everything you need to get really good at this. Okay, so you can kind of think about the way we're going to go about this as like a three-pronged approach and three different perspectives. So, first is we want to change the way you think about your child's behavior. I know I keep pounding that in. Some people get really frustrated with this talk because they're like, I want more strategies. Tell me what to do. Tell me what to say. I will, but this whole idea that you have to change your lens is a strategy. You won't be able to do anything else if you don't do this, because you won't be consistent, and your kid will know you're lying. They know when we're lying. They know when we don't believe them, or when we're just doing this for a second. They're like, hey, you're just gonna go back to how you were. You have to really buy into this, and when you put this lens on, you have to keep it on. You don't get to take it off. So, it's not like you put the new lens on, oh, I see, my kid is not being challenging on purpose. It's, what we're gonna say, it's lagging skills. You don't get to put it on and then take it off because you don't like that, your 7-year-old swearing. Like, oh, that's fine, but I can't tolerate the swearing. You don't get to do that. You don't get to cherry pick. So once it's on, it's on. You're seeing this differently. But once you do, your relationship with your child is gonna improve. It's easier to act positive if you actually feel it and you're thinking positive. It's so hard to fake it. So actually believing this stuff is useful. It improved culture at home. It's just, like I said, don't consider this a technique, because what's gonna happen is it's hard and you're gonna wanna quit. And you're gonna be like, yeah, that didn't work, just put it in a pile of other things that didn't work. Don't do that. Make this a way of being, make it a way of doing. I mean, you're gonna start to see adults differently if you really buy into this. Oh, why would that adult act that way if they could do better? They must be struggling with something. And I'll tell kids that when they get really angry at their parents. I'm like, look, just like you would do better if you could, your parents would do better too. So we're gonna help them learn a better way to do this as well. It goes both ways. So everybody's just gonna feel better. So again, you gotta change that lens first. So in order to do that, we have to look at the language that we're speaking. Skills. We're gonna look at this through the language of skills. This is so critical to understanding what's going on with your kid, because they can look really ridiculous and really mysterious. Like, oh my gosh, are you really human? You're acting like an animal. And I get that, I have one. So we want to talk about lagging skills, okay? So it's not that your kids have not developed any skills or any of these particular skills. It's that usually in a certain situation where there's a particular demand, your child doesn't have enough of the particular skills that he or she needs in order to do well. So the common lagging skills that go into behavior, this is not comprehensive, but we're just touching on some of them. So frustration tolerance and emotional control. So how long can I be frustrated before I explode? Before I lay down on the floor and scream and kick? I can probably stay frustrated a lot longer than my children. Often, the reason that it looks like that was out of nowhere, there was nothing that contributed to that, often it's because they have very little frustration tolerance. You don't even notice that what's going on is frustrating them, because they go from 0 to 100. And then once they're dysregulated emotionally, it's a skill to get yourself regulated again. That's really hard. It's hard for us as adults to imagine what it feels like for a kid to not be able to re-stabilize themselves emotionally. They feel out of control. And just because we direct them to do it doesn't mean that they're going to be able to do it. So, observed in action, we say, our language is, well, they throw tantrums, they have meltdowns, they're irrational. And coincidentally, I pulled some of these from your registrations, so I know this. I know that that's what you're observing. What you're observing whenever it's this behavior is often boils down to, among others, frustration, tolerance, and emotional control. They need those skills. So focusing, persisting on challenging or tedious tasks, not only do I need to focus and start something, but if I don't like it and it's boring, actually staying focused on it, that's a whole other skill. And our kids have very low ability to do this often. So if I don't like it, it's hard, it doesn't feel good, yeah, of course I don't want to do it. Then we say, well, he'll do it if it's something he likes to do. So I don't know if I believe that he can't do this, because he'll do something if he likes to do it. Well, of course he will. I like to do things, and I can definitely persist on those things much easier than the things that I don't like to do. I look ridiculous when I procrastinate. And so, when I'm not doing well, when I have a hard time persisting on tedious tasks, I don't look good in the moment. I don't look like I'm meeting expectations, just like our kids. So considering the perspective of others, considering a range of solutions, that's a huge one. When we don't see that happening, we say things like, well, he'll do it if it's something he wants to do, right? He wants what he wants when he wants it. Well, yeah, of course. I mean, I want what I want when I want it. I hope you do too. I think we want kids to want what they want and when they want it, but to also have the skills to kind of delay gratification or to manage their impulse to just get it, Or I'm just gonna, I know you want me to do this, and I don't like it and it's hard, but just because you want me to, your perspective is this is important, that's not gonna make me have the skill to do it. That's not gonna make me able to persist on it. Your perspective is not helping in this case. Expressing thoughts, feelings, and needs in words. This is a huge one. So I will work with kids who have really high IQs, have really sophisticated vocabulary for their age. But in general, our ability to put our thoughts, feelings, and needs into words just is not great. Even we as adults, that's why we're passive aggressive. That's why we get the silent treatment. That's why we kind of have to go back and apologize for ridiculous behavior as adults, because in the moment, we weren't able to sit down and say, rationally, all right, look, here's what I'm struggling with. Maybe if we could work it out, we could come to some mutually agreeable solution. Sometimes our emotions make it really hard for us to do that. So you can imagine, a child who is really lagging in expressive language, how hard it is for them to do it. So if I were to say, hey, what's going on? You're having a hard time, moving from video games to bedtime at night. And, my child's like, well, Mom, I just feel like it's so hard all day. There's so many demands on me. And when I'm playing video games, it just feels good. And if you could just give me some extra time. I mean, I know you're concerned, Mom. Like, you just wouldn't go down that path. My kid's gonna be like, oh, you're so annoying. Shut up. Like that kind of thing. Because right away, he's frustrated and doesn't want to have this conversation. And it's really hard for him to regulate and start to put those thoughts, feelings, and needs into productive words. So anyway, we might say he's stubborn, disrespectful, has an attitude, mouthy, belligerent. That's usually what comes out. Also those words like, this is boring, this is stupid, I hate this, I'm not doing that, that's dumb. That's usually a red flag that there's lagging expressive language, because those are like rubber stamped words. Like, I don't know how to describe what this is, but I don't like it, it's boring. I know I don't like boring things. So we can drill down and try to figure out what's beneath the boring. So seeking attention in appropriate ways. Who doesn't like attention? I mean, I'm more worried about the kid that doesn't want attention. I want my kid to want attention. I want kids to want attention. The thing is, they just need to have the skills to seek it appropriately, and to understand, how they're coming across and how they're affecting other people. So yeah, he just wants attention. That statement, you may as well just give it up because it doesn't really mean anything. You're right, he just does want attention, so now what do we do about it? I think it's good that kids want attention. So again, going on with these skills, so common behaviors, again, I took these from your registration, so physical aggression, hitting, kicking, throwing, we need frustration, tolerance, emotional control. We need to seek attention in appropriate ways. And this is not, it's not limited to what I'm putting up here. This is just, hey, a common scenario is, we need these skills in order to target these behaviors. So if you have a child that's talking back, threats, gives you sass, that's a big one. You probably got lagging expressive language, putting those thoughts, feelings, and needs into words. Probably seeing grays is hard, so you've got some black and white thinking there. You get very quick reactions when that happens. Whining and complaining, that's annoying. Probably sense of time is lagging. Probably maintaining focus, persisting on tedious tasks, appreciating how they're coming across. I mean, nobody wants, if your child understood and could manage how annoying they are whenever they whine all day, there's no way they would be doing it. It's so annoying. So if they could do it differently, they would if they understood it. Throwing tantrums, crying, screaming, clearly expressive language, emotional control, and that frustration tolerance. So, I guess I have more. I got refusing directives, considering a range of solutions, deviating from rules or routine. Impulse control is a huge one. It's really hard to teach impulse control, and it's really hard to deal with a kid who has none. Lying is a big one. We see lying as such a character flaw. Oh my God, my kid is lying. Let's reserve a juvenile detention cell because liars are killers. Like, we can't do that. Lying is often, I don't have the expressive language to let you understand what's going on. I don't have a range of solutions to this problem. I'm impulsively responding to you because you brought this up and I wasn't expecting it, or I didn't want to talk about it. And let's face it, nobody wants to keep talking about this stuff. This is not enjoyable for you, and it's really not enjoyable for the child, so you're gonna lie. But that's not a character flaw, that's their maladaptive response. So we just need to give them a better way. We'll do that. Needing to be asked many times, persisting on tedious or challenging tasks. Low self-esteem, this is one, like you can consider this a behavior, right? I can't perspective take. I don't really appreciate how I'm coming across to others. I'm thinking people are thinking something that they probably aren't, and I'm acting on it. I can't really connect well with others, and I don't maybe have basic social skills. Those are typical things that go into low self-esteem. Nervous, anxious, perfectionism. So handling predictability, expressive language, thinking in the grades, entering groups or social situations, those are usually skills that are lagging when you see those behaviors. So here's some good news. You can rest assured that if your children or the kids that you're about are lagging in some of those skills that we just talked about, then they're definitely also lagging in manipulation, coercion, extortion, controlling of others, all those things that we tend to blame behavior on. Because you see, manipulation is sophisticated. If I need to manipulate somebody, one of the key factors there is they can't know that I'm manipulating them, and that takes some skill, way beyond just managing my frustration or controlling my emotions. Coercion, forcing somebody to do something because I'm aware that they're not going to do it, and I'm aware why. Like, I have a realistic view of this person, so I know I need to use coercion. That's sophisticated. Extortion. I read an article about emotional extortion. Kids emotionally extort us. That's ridiculous, because if your child understands how you feel and knows, oh, I can get what I want because I can make you feel guilty, why would they choose that if they could just get what they want just by doing it? They love you. They don't want to make you feel bad. That makes no sense. So the fact that a child could be so lagging in basic skills, like putting their thoughts, feelings, and needs into words, but they're so sophisticated to understand that, oh, it's going to annihilate you as a mother for me to say you're a bad mom if you don't give me that video game, and that's how I'm going to get it. I'm choosing that. That just makes no sense. There's nothing to support that. Not common sense wise, but also, again, we have half a century of data from behavioral studies and studying kids' brains to know that's not going to be their first choice if they can do something better. They're not going to choose to hurt you to get what they want. They're going to choose to please you to get what they want because it feels better. So we can rule these out. Your task is accepting that we can rule them out whenever you're really frustrated or you're bewildered by your kid's behavior, because it's really hard to do. Okay, so now that we have the language and we have the perspective to understand, oh, okay, so it's lagging skills, skill not will, right? We can kind of move on to changing your daily habits. This is going to be really natural. It's going to come natural to you if you're really able to put that new lens on. If you truly believe and see your child differently, then some of these daily habits are just, they're going to go away or they're going to improve naturally. But let's think about it. A lot of what you do is probably done out of fear. If I don't nip this in the bud, it's only going to get worse. Or what are people going to think if I'm out in public and my kid is talking back to me or just looking like a little jerk? I better say something because he's gonna think that's okay, and these parents are gonna think I'm permissive and I'm a pushover, and that's all fear. You know, we don't need to do that because it's not gonna solve it. So changing these daily habits along with shifting your perspective is gonna eliminate the need to parent out of fear. It's gonna take the pressure off you. Yeah, people might judge you if they don't know this approach, and that's okay because things are gonna get better in your house. You're not gonna have to keep dealing with this. This stuff's predictable. You know what your child struggles with, and you know that circumstances are usually pretty similar. There's usually similar scenarios that lead up to the challenging behavior. And so, you know, if you're out in public, you've got a pretty good idea of whether or not this stuff's gonna happen. Don't be scared, just let it happen. You know what I mean? If you haven't gotten to it yet, you haven't tackled it yet, what people think is what they think. You know, that's something you're gonna have to get over. This isn't the quick fix, that's the thing. You know you're going about it the long way. This is the hard way, but it's the way that actually solves it proactively. So in the moment, if your kid's still throwing tantrums at Target because they can't get a toy every time, and you haven't gotten to that problem yet, and you can only do one or two of these at a time, if you haven't gotten to that one yet, you know that's gonna happen. So just be prepared. Teaching skills and setting the stage for optimal development. So the more we stress and we fight and we've got kind of animosity in the house, the longer it's gonna take for your kid to naturally get to where he or she needs to be. And that's because of the way the brain works. You know, your brain wants to work for you. I think the brain is so fascinating, I love it. And the thing is, it's kind of like the only organ that thinks for itself, so bear with me while I describe it, but it's like, your brain wants to work for you. So it's always on standby, I love this. And so it starts to notice what you're doing. And it starts to think, oh, okay, well you're getting like stressed and frustrated and anxious a lot. So you must want to do that a lot. Cool, I'm gonna make that easier for you. So I'm gonna create the neural connections necessary for that to happen. We're gonna work together here in the brain and we're gonna make that happen easier for you. No problem, I work for you. The problem is, its intentions are good. The brain has intentions, its intentions are good, but it doesn't discern whether it's good or bad for you. And so especially so for your child. So if your child is stressed and frustrated and anxious a lot, your child's brain thinks that's what it wants to do, and so it's making it easier. So with a lot of repetition comes brain change. It's gonna be harder to back out of that if, for a long time, repeatedly, your child's acting out of stress and frustration. You wanna keep things calm as much as possible in the moment, so that we don't get into that. I'm not saying the brain is amazing, you can reverse it, it's just making our job harder. So getting into those power struggles is just, it doesn't do anything good. Okay. So, daily habits. Watch your facial expressions. This is a big one for me. I often am very unaware of my facial expressions, so I can only imagine what my kids see. But just be very aware of it. Hopefully, some of that will be alleviated as you kind of look at your kid with more compassion, which often happens when you see them and you see, oh, okay, I understand a little bit more about why they're struggling. There's not that, I'll just say that look on your face as much. You know, how do you react when your child answers you? How are you responding with nonverbals when your child says something that you disagree with? So I work with a lot of parents and I can identify with this, where, okay, I'm gonna practice, I'm gonna keep my mouth shut when my kid says something ridiculous. Like, okay, so why are you having a hard time keeping your hands to yourself when you're playing with your brother? Well, because, you know, he hit me first. And you're like, you saw it. That's not true, right? You know it's not true. Factually, that did not happen. And it's so hard to be like, that did. All right, I saw it. I was there. We're not going to do that. Because now all of a sudden your kid's escalated. You can't even do anything about it. You're going to have to delay this conversation. What you want, you just want to stay neutral. Think about this. You're solving this through your child's perspective. That's where the problem's occurring. It may be that there's something about how this kid's perceiving the situation that they truly believe that there was some slight to them first, and it's completely warranted to react this way. We have to get to the bottom of that. That's what we need to change, not convincing the child that the facts are different. You know, we don't need We don't need to argue facts like that. So you might be asking the right questions and avoiding sensitive words or topics, but are your nonverbals less patient and understanding? Just make sure they match. And then watch the buts. I see this so much in my office, and it's like nails on a chalkboard to me. So I have a parent that's trying so hard, and it's like, I love you so much, and I understand you're having a hard time, but you really need to understand that this is just unacceptable. It's like, you just negated it. Like, we're just back to square one. So just watch the buts, and don't kind of negate all the positive reinforcement and the unconditional positive regard with I just can't help but put my expectation in here. Because we do that, it's so tempting. Anytime we give praise or we say something that's like, you're good just the way you are, but here's a way you can be better. It's really tempting to do that. Don't assume. We always assume we know why kids do what they do. And that's dangerous here, because you're gonna miss out on some really good information if you go into this situation assuming you know. Because we have a lot of good philosophies, good theories, plus we're the parents, or we're the caretakers, we're the teachers, we're the adult. We think, okay, well, if nobody else is gonna figure this out, I gotta figure out why this is happening. What's the deal here? I wrote some interesting real life scenarios down, some of the most surprising things that we've learned in my office by actually putting our theories on the shelf and finding out from the child what's actually making this hard for you, because this is the kind of conversation you're going to go into. I'm going to teach you the basics, but I want you to know, I had a 6-year-old, her parents found out she was refusing to eat, but not because of what they thought, which was that she just wanted to be in control and she wanted to choose her food. She didn't want to eat what they were eating. Turns out, when we really got to the bottom of it, it was that her mom would touch the food to make sure that it was cool enough for her to eat. And she would become so frustrated so fast that she would just melt down, and then she wouldn't eat at all. And so there was this assumption that, you don't want it, like, you just want to be in control here. You want what you want when you want it. And it was more like, when she'd see that finger touch the food, that was it. She just couldn't stand it. And she couldn't talk about it. Her expressive language skills were just out the door when her emotions were so dysregulated. So it took talking to her in the way that I'm going to talk to you about in a minute to get to the bottom of that. And if I would have just assumed that it was what her parents said, we wouldn't have gotten that information. And that helped solve the problem. I had a 5-year-old. She refused to take a bath. And it was just thought because she didn't want to go to bed. She wanted to play. She wanted to do all the fun things. Turned out, once I started talking to her, she had gotten shampoo in her eyes at one point in the bath. And it was so untenable for her to think about being back in that bath. She just resisted every single day. She couldn't stand it because it hurt so bad. And that just wasn't on the radar at all before that. We get so deep in these power struggles that we get far away from an opportunity to really talk about the real issues. And this is one too, I had actually this was the other day, I had a 12-year-old that was lying about apps on her phone, especially TikTok, because she had gotten TikTok taken away because her parents overheard a video with swear words in it. And so she lied, and she got TikTok and was using it. And her parents were so focused on the lying that they just couldn't hear that all my friends use TikTok. When I go over to sleepovers or we go over and get together at houses, well, everybody ignores the person that doesn't have TikTok. And so I feel like I just don't have any friends. I don't want to go to their house anymore. So it was just creating this whole shift in her mentality with peers and her social situation. She was really depressed about it. But we were so focused on the fact that she lied and she just wanted what she wanted when she wanted it and wanted to be in control. And she's a teenager, and teenagers love technology. And it was wasting time. We couldn't get to really solving it and figuring out, okay, well, what's the problem and what can we do about it? So just kind of wanted to, I think those are interesting ones. So remember the skills, watch your tone. Telling a child to have a skill is not teaching them that skill. When you go through this process with them, that's going to help teach them the skills. But telling them, okay, you need to control yourself. Control your emotions. Don't cry, don't scream. That's not teaching them. That's not going to work. It's probably going to get worse. And don't forget, it takes two to tango. So if your child is having behaviors in the moment, a lot of you put on your registration that you want to know what to do in the moment. And here's your answer, and it's very easy. Ease up. So if we know that an expectation is not compatible with a kid's skill or their ability to meet it in that moment, if we keep pressing the expectation and we dig our heels in, I mean, what's going to happen? You're going to continue to see behavior, and probably even worse. Given that we know for sure that kids are intrinsically motivated, they don't want to do poorly, they want to do well. We know giving in is fine. We're not teaching them that that's how they should get what they want, because they don't want to do it that way. They want a better way. So while you do the hard work on the front end, if whatever expectation is occurring, I want 4 cookies, you get 2. I want 4, you get 2, now you get none. Just give them 4 cookies. I mean, do you want to die on that cross? I don't. Just take 4 cookies. Because then I'm going to try to tackle, oh, you're having a hard time sticking with the allotted amount of cookies. We're going to talk about that later, but not when you're so angry because you're not getting 4 cookies. We can't do any work in the moment if you're so angry because I am digging my heels in and saying you have 2 cookies. It's just not that important right now. It's not going to help. Be careful with your humor. I am so guilty of this. So I call myself out, don't worry. You'll always know when I am not good at this. 4-year-olds looking selfish and lacking empathy is not a future serial killer. I hear that all the time. It's not even funny anymore. Like, it's just not true. I know that we don't really believe that, but I think that there's a grain of truth when we say this stuff. Like, we're worried. We're worried if we don't, like, what's going to happen to my kid? I've got this little kid talking back to me, running around that just looks like this mean, rude adult. I'm so worried about it. That's how serial killers act. So it's kind of, you teeter back and forth. It's ridiculous, but there's a reason I'm saying it. It just puts you in a negative space. It's better to stay away from that stuff, trust me. 10-year-old becomes aggressive when he's not able to manage his frustration, he's not a juvenile delinquent in training. Stuff like that, just, you get my point, I'm sure. Okay, so here's the hard part, changing the dialogue with your child. This is where I really want you to use the resources at your disposal for collaborative and proactive solutions. I do as much of this work as I can, in the community, helping people. I'm always offering to help where I can because, it's Rock Screen's mission to get this out into the world, and I feel like it's mine as well. And every resource that you need to be able to do this on your own is available. You don't need to come to my office and pay me to help you do this. I would never tell you that you do. Everything you need is on that website. And so I'm happy to help you with it. Because I wish I would have had somebody help me when I was trying to do it. It's really hard, but it's very doable and it's life-changing and it's worth it. So the dialogue, the conversations you're gonna have with your kid, they're gonna change. You're gonna figure out what the actual problem is, okay? You're probably gonna be the first one to do this because let's face it, if anybody else had bothered to do this, there would be a problem. So nobody's ever gotten to the bottom of these problems. That's why there's this persistent, pervasive problem going on. That's why you see the behavior time and time again. The solutions are actually going to go with the problem. Do you guys feel like you give choices a lot? Or, I hear people saying, I was flexible. I said that we could try a different way. I suggested that we do this instead, but he still wasn't willing to do it. If we're just randomly throwing out solutions or different ways of doing things, then we're still being authoritative. We're still kind of setting expectations that aren't meetable because we didn't quite figure out what the problem was first. So save yourself some time and frustration, figure out what's standing in your kid's way, and then go into, collaboratively solving it, because then that way the solution matches the problem and you're not just, having to go back to the drawing board. Figuring out a different way to get to the finish line that works with what your child's able to do. That's the key, with what your child's able to do. I would say meeting a kid where they're at is not coddling. It's just gonna help, it's gonna fast track things. And being proactive is so important because if you're always responding to behavior, your life's still gonna be hard. And I think we can do better than that. I know we can do better than that. And we can do better than that for kids. When we feel bad or we feel depressed or anxious or however it is, when we go to a doctor, we look for improvement. We look for alleviation of symptoms. We're not like, I want something that's going to help me every time I feel this way to then feel better. It's not good enough for us, so it's not good enough for kids. We don't want them to feel that way and then have to be responded to. We just want to eliminate it completely. That's why the proactive piece is so important. So when you change the dialogue, a lot of this is kind of, I say this, not that. Sometimes it feels like there are nuances or we're splitting hairs with words. But it's really important because our kids are used to us coming to them with a certain attitude or with a certain demeanor, and we talk about their behavior a lot. And they don't know why they do it. They don't know what's going on. They don't often know how to articulate the problem. And so they don't want to talk about it. And so we have to kind of stay away from some of the things that will just shut them down. Think about this. Your conversations are not going to be about the behavior, because that's the symptom. That's the red flag that you're seeing. It's going to be about the expectation that they're having a hard time meeting. Okay? So hey, you're having a hard time getting started on that math homework lately. What's going on? You're having a hard time when it's time to brush your teeth before bed. What's going on? That type of thing. Not, why do you get so mad when it's time to brush your teeth? Or why do you refuse? It's so easy. I don't understand. Why are you making a big deal out of it? Like, we don't want to do that. We got to stay neutral. That's the biggest thing. Staying neutral is huge. Always followed up by, what's up? What's going on? That's the best way to get kids to talk. It kind of opens up just a general forum for them to just respond however they want. It's not so targeted, why do you do this thing? It's more like, hey, I've noticed you're having a hard time with this. What's up? What's going on? They'll usually have something to say unless your relationship has deteriorated to a degree that they don't want to engage with you. Note, because this is a question I get a lot, you can have this exchange verbally or non-verbally and anywhere in between. You can do this method and approach with somebody who is a day old or somebody who's 88 years old. Anywhere in between. It doesn't necessarily matter how verbal somebody is. If you think about infants, what do we do with infants? We do a version of this. They just can't communicate with us. Their communication, we know behaviors, but because they can't talk, we kind of have to do a little bit of guessing, a little bit of testing, and noticing what happens when we do it. Oh, well, this baby's crying. Okay, well, let me check the diaper. That's clean. Hungry. Feed it. Does it stop? Oh, so when it cries at this time of the day, and I feed it, that solved the problem. It must have been hungry. Okay. So while if a child is more verbal, then you can actually be more targeted and more specific and streamline it because, hey, vocally, the child can tell you what's going on. But if you have a nonverbal child, then that's okay. However it is that you typically communicate with a child, even if they're young and they don't have a lot of verbal skills at all, you might use pictures, you might draw, you might have flashcards. There's a way that we communicate with kids. Use that way, and we do a version of this. We do whatever we can. If we have to take guesses and do trial and error, then we do a little bit of that. But just note that. Don't leave here saying, oh, that was for kids that were older, because my kid's too young to talk like that. You'd be surprised. Give your kids a chance, because if you're talking on their level, they can do this with you and they want to. If this is a problem for you, your kid's struggling and they really want to talk to you about this, any way you allow it. So try to open the forum and see what they can do. You'll be surprised. So again, strategy is to talk. You're talking with them. You're trying to get to the bottom of the problem that you'll solve together. So that first step, identifying the problem. Timing matters. You're not doing it in the heat of the moment. You're not doing it when the problem's happening. The kid's just not wired to do that with you. So pick a time when everything's calm. You de-escalate the situation any way you can. Just give the kid what they want. Give them what they need. Make it better. Give them a hug. Just divert attention away from it. Get the child understanding that we're doing it differently now. You're not going to get in trouble when you're struggling. We're going to solve it when you're not struggling. So it could be that, I know my kid does really well, like if we're in the car and I'm not looking at him, He does well with just talking my ear off of what's going on. If you sit a kid down face to face and make it this formal conversation, they're likely not going to do very well at first. You know, be like, come on, let's talk. We need to talk about this. I would sit down maybe, I don't know, on your phone while your kid's on their device, or whatever it is, if you're into that kind of thing. Sit down next to them and be like, you know, I'll do this even with kids in my office. I'll be like, hey, mom, you can send them in with a phone or a device because we're going to use it today. And I'll sit down and get my phone out and have them sit down and be like, hey, you know, your mom said you're having a hard time getting ready for bed at night. What's going on? And they don't even know because they're playing their game, and kids can multitask way better than we can. You'd be surprised. So they're playing their game, it's just kind of natural, and they don't even realize they're giving you this valuable information, and they're not resistant. So just find ways where they're kind of distracted, and it doesn't feel like such a formal, targeted conversation. Common pitfalls. Okay, so your child's gonna say, I don't know. That's common, it's okay. It doesn't mean you stop. Do things like, hey, I don't know either. You know what, this is hard. This has been going on for a while with us. So I want to do this differently. Let's think about it. Let's really think about what goes on when it's time to brush your teeth before bed. Let's figure this out together. What's making this so hard? Because I get you. I'm with you. I don't know either. Sometimes the kid will just be silent, and you know, it's likely a kid that you know well enough to get the nonverbals. Sometimes I may not know the kid well enough, so I gotta discern. But usually they take a long time to think sometimes. And so don't mistake that with they're just refusing to talk. They take a long time to think about stuff like this. And so sometimes I'll let some time go by, and then I'll say something like, you're really thinking about this, aren't you? And then they start. And they're like, yeah, well, because usually if I talk, mom says, like, that's not true, or whatever. So just notice what they're doing and make it okay. If they want to come back to it later, they can come back to it later. It just really seems like maybe you're not ready to talk about it. Why don't we talk after school tomorrow? I'll make your favorite snack, we'll sit down at the table, and we'll kind of try to tackle this tomorrow. Something like that. Again, your child says something you believe is not accurate. Just remember, the problem's occurring from your child's perspective. Underestimating what they say is you're throwing away valuable information. Because even if you think that piece of information they just gave me is not right, there's going to be more to it. Keep going. Keep drilling down. Resist the urge to refute it. Minimize, invalidate. You know, your abilities to perspective take, problem solve, be flexible, anticipate the outcome, etc., are likely much stronger. I say likely, but I'm pretty sure they are. So think about what it would be like to be a kid and to not be able to do the things that are just part of us. These things are part of who we are. They're easy for us. We do them every day. It's really hard to imagine what it would be like to go through life not being able to control your emotions, not being able to understand how another person feels, or to understand how they feel, but I'm too impulsive to even take that into consideration. I just need this thing, or I just hate this thing so much that I explode. It's hard. If your child just won't have a conversation with you, likely, you know, you're in it. It's very common that relationships have deteriorated, and since topics just get so sensitive. And so you may have to take a couple steps back. I work with a lot of families that have to take a couple steps back. They can't even jump into this because they have to kind of rebuild credibility, rebuild relationships. You know, this kid needs to understand and see evidence that we're not doing it the old way anymore. And that's why you can be very transparent with them. I really believe in that, to explain, look, I get it, you're probably really mad at me because I get so angry with you when you're trying, and I thought that you weren't. But I don't believe that anymore. And we're gonna do this differently. And I'm gonna help you, and you're not in trouble. And it may be a while before this child trusts you. But you just have to kind of be consistent. I kind of say, like, be the bigger person, because you are. And just keep with the consistency. Kids are very resilient, and they're way more forgiving than we are. So they come around pretty quickly once they start to see this. Just reassure them that you're not in trouble. That's a big one. You're not in trouble. We're just going to do this differently. I want this to be easier for you. Use a lot of reflection. This is kind of a technique if you can't get more information, if you're having a hard time extracting information. Stop way more frequently than feels natural and say, all right, let me make sure I got all this. And repeat everything that your kid says. Don't change it. Don't extrapolate, just repeat it. They love it. It's like candy to them. Oh my gosh, you're listening to me, you can repeat what I'm saying, and you have no input here, that's amazing. They just want to keep going, because it's almost like euphoric sometimes for kids to hear you just listening and repeating and reflecting. Do a lot of, empathy. I'm putting myself in your shoes. Please, I'm just imagining what you're describing, and I feel so bad. I've never thought of what it must be like to be you in that scenario. All this time I've been trying to make you do this thing, and I didn't realize this was so miserable for you. I feel terrible that you have to feel that way. So those kinds of things go a long way. So just some tips. I know you're upset, but stay away from that. Try this instead. Wow, it's been really hard for you. I'd really like to know more. Keep just fact finding. Sounds like you're angry. That's nice of you to acknowledge feelings. That's very kind and it's very healthy. However, you can't solve feelings. And so it's great, but you need to go a step further. So yes, you acknowledge the child is angry, but we knew that already. We saw the frustration and we saw the emotional instability. We really want to help the child talk about what contributed to that to begin with. So, notice it, and care about it, but we can move on pretty quickly. So you can say something like, let me make sure I got everything you said. You said, we're going to stick to the facts. We're going to stick to gathering information. That's what's going to move you forward. And that's the difference between kind of the old conventional ways of all right, I'll listen to your feelings, but I'm still going to make you do it. That's still my job. And this where it's oh, okay, we figured out what the problem is, and now we're just going to do it differently. So then you're going to clarify your adult concern. It's easy enough. You just wait until that first step is done. You're sure you got your child's concern, and then you can put yours on the table. So just because you're acknowledging that your child can't do what you're asking them to do, it doesn't mean that you have zero expectations. Your expectation still gets thrown into the mix, but you got to be careful about how you word it. Okay. So if you say something like, okay, well, so I understand this is what's hard for you, but I need you to understand that I gotta get all these kids to bed at night, and when you don't brush your teeth, it makes it take longer, and it's hard for me to get everybody coordinated. Your kid's never been a parent. They don't care about that. That's not gonna kind of give them the perspective that they need in order to really buy into the idea of solving a problem with you. You're not trying to get them to agree with you. It's just that they need to understand that you have a perspective and it's useful for them to solve this because, oh, I get it. There's something in this for me. You have this concern and it's for me because of my safety and my well-being and my happiness. I get it, okay. So that can be tricky. That's something that, as you start to do this and you start to troubleshoot, I can help you with that. The website will help you with that. There's no hard and fast answer to that because I don't know what your expectations are. But just step back and ask yourself, have I gotten into this expectation because of a power struggle? Is it that now all of a sudden I'm just imposing my will because this child's imposing their will? Or was there a reason for this to begin with? Why as parents do we have expectations? Keeping your hands to yourself when you're playing with your brother, AKA they're not hitting, but we don't talk about behaviors. Our adult concern is, hey, I know you love playing with your brother. And when it doesn't end well like that, I see that you're sad and so is your brother. And I feel like you could have a lot more playtime if we could just solve this problem. So there's something in it for him. More playtime, playing with your brother. And it's true. If they don't hit and they don't fight, they get more playtime. You're not lying to them. It's just that you're staying away from talking at them about things that they just don't care about that's only going to frustrate them. So, again, why should you care, or why should your child care about your concern? Not because I'm the parent, you're the child. Not because doing what I say will make mom's life easier. They're not going to be able to buy in with that. But because understanding that there's another perspective and a different course of action takes skills, but also creates that buy-in. I'm better able to see that you have a stake in this. I should be working with you because it's going to help us. So the whole way, hey, I need you to listen. We have a lot to do today. That might be That might be what you're thinking is your expectation. Geez, I need this kid to listen. I got so much to do today. If he doesn't listen, I'm not gonna get everything on this list done and things are gonna fall apart. You might reword that, I know you wanted time to build your Legos before dinner. I'm concerned if we don't work quickly, you won't have time. You can just decide what you're gonna do and what you aren't. I'm parent your child. It might be better to say something like, I'm concerned that we're starting the days off on a bad note. It makes me sad to send you to school crying every day because we had a bad morning. Like, if you know your child doesn't like to go to school crying, then it would be useful to tap into that idea because you're gonna get some acknowledgement, oh, you're right, this is a problem. Okay, well, we can solve it. I can't have you hitting your brother or whatever. He doesn't care. You know, like I said, I've seen you really enjoy playtime. I'm concerned you miss out if you can't keep your hands to yourself. So we need to solve that. And then the third step. This is where you're inviting your child to come up with a solution with you together. So the main point here is the solution has to address both concerns, okay? And it's gonna be a new idea for both of you that your concern is just as important, or your child's concern is just as important as your concern, because usually ours trumps. Like, hey, if we disagree, just say no, mine's more important. Like, we're going with mine, not yours. That's usually the model. But with this, that doesn't come into play. We gotta be creative here. And it's hard. And sometimes you gotta go back to the drawing board because your first attempt didn't work. And that's okay. But hey, give your child the first stab at it. Hey, you know, what can you think of that we could do differently that's gonna address your concern, that is, repeat it, and also my concern that I wanna make sure that, you know, you have enough time to do the things that you wanna do after dinner. So I need to make sure that we're efficient here and see what they come up with. Don't sign off on anything that you know your child cannot do. And also, if you feel like, that's not gonna address both concerns, like I had one, I always think about this one, I don't know why it sticks out in my mind, but it was, because I think he was 5, and he was really good at this. Somehow this 5-year-old was really good at this process, but his solutions were silly. Like, he would say some stuff like, you know, his little baby brother would make him angry, so he wanted the baby brother to live in the garage. Like, that was one of the things, like, well, he should just live in the garage. So we get to that point. And, but he was really amenable to explanations about why that might not work. So I hear you. I love that you are willing to talk to me about this, and I love that you're part of the solution. Here's what I'm worried about. I feel like your baby brother living in the garage would be really unsafe. You know what I mean? It's like, I love that you're doing this. Let's tweak some of the parts here and get this to a place where it actually would address the problem. So again, you're collaborating on a solution to try when the problem comes up again. You're being proactive. You're inviting your child to suggest elements of the solution first. Don't sign off on a solution that you're pretty sure your child will fail with. This is to help him succeed. And don't sign off on an unrealistic solution, or like baby brothers in the garage. Make sure it addresses the original problem. Remember, because you found it out. You did all that hard work to figure out what that original problem was. That was the new element here. So use it to your advantage. So some common concerns that I have. My child is too young to communicate this way. So I touched on that. If you know your child best, or you know, maybe you're a caretaker or a teacher, or just an adult that spends time with this child, figure out what moves them. Figure out what gets them to engage with you. Be creative. You know, we will use in my office a lot of visuals. We'll draw. We use very basic language. We meet the kid where they're at in terms of how they're able to interact and test this out. I get what you're saying, but I want to know what we do in the heat of the moment. That's all I care about. I just wanted to do, how do I get this to stop? Again, that is, you've heard many pieces of advice about what to do in the heat of the moment. Be more strict. Send them to their room. Lock them in their room. Like, you've heard all that. And you're probably here because it just hasn't worked yet. So the best I can tell you is, do what I'm telling you to do here. You know, go to the Lives in Balance website, really get good at this. You're not going to worry so much about when you see that behavior. It's not going to scare you. You're not going to feel like so compelled in the moment to solve it because you know you are doing something about it. It's just not right then. So ease up, take away the expectation that's creating it. Again, you're not teaching maladaptive responses, they already have them. You're just kind of giving them a slower, better path to using adaptive responses. I really just want to know how to make my child listen. And that's just like, I get that a lot, but it's the same thing. They will listen to you, they want to listen to you, but you have to make it easier for them to listen to you, and you do that with this type of conversation that we talked about here. Okay, so it's your turn. You're going to be trying this, and you're coming back next week, and we're going to talk about it. You want to look at what skills, let's look at your kid through the lens of wagging skills. That might be a whole new approach for you. Look up on Lives in the Balance. There's something called the Assessment of Wagging Skills and Unsolved Problems as a guide that will help you kind of walk through it in a very organized way. If I would have shown you that today, we probably would have taken a whole hour. That's why I feel like it's probably better for you to take a look at that, but we'll talk about it next week, because I hope you look at it. We can troubleshoot. But it'll just help you get a comprehensive list, because this is the thing. If you have a comprehensive list of all the unsolved problems you'd love to solve, here's my wish list. These are all the things, all the expectations my kid's not meeting. This is where I see behaviors. You might have 100 problems. That's fine. We start with the top 2 or 3. Usually health and safety is prioritized. And then the thing is, the skills that are required in order for them to be successful with whatever it is you're talking to them about are usually the same skills for a lot of the other problems on the list, right? So let's say we tackle the top 3, we put a solution in place, that stuff doesn't happen anymore. You might see another 5 fall off your list because your child needs those skills in order to do well in those areas too. So you're not going to have to do this like for all 100, but also keep in mind, new problems always come up as we solve them. It just feels so much better to have a way to address them. Make up your mind to put the rest of these things on the back burner until you get to them. You have to make up your mind to do that. You're not going to panic when you see these behaviors. That's going to be the biggest thing. Really, what's the worst thing that can happen? So, I know you can do it, but we'll be back here next week and we'll troubleshoot, see what you guys run into.
A parent asks, when you're up against timelines and you have somewhere to go and your child is on the floor having a tantrum, you can't just give in. So how do you deal with that? Do you just do the best you can and try to deal with it later? What would you suggest?
I wish there were, when that happens, this is exactly what you need to do. I wish there was, because then you wouldn't be here if there was, right? But it's kind of, you weigh everything and you think, okay, where is it that we're trying to go? Say if it's, we have to pick another child up. Well, I know how it is if you're like 2 minutes late for school, and it is a big problem, right? So there's that. So I'm gonna have to pick this child up and manage and do whatever I need to do, but we are gonna come back and address this. Ideally, that kind of diffusing in the heat of the moment would come in the form of, laying off the expectations any way you can. But yeah, it's life, you know what I mean? You do what you gotta do sometimes. I was trying to go give this talk somewhere, this is like 2 years ago or something, and my kid was like, I'm not getting in the car to go to the babysitter unless you give me $100. And I was like, kid, if I had $100, you'd have it in your pocket right now, because I need to be there, and these people, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't get $100, and I'm like, because you do what you gotta do. I never take it back, but I'm just saying. Who would have managed? But still, it's kind of, if he could have just gone to the babysitter, it would have been, that's what he would have chosen. But we had a problem at the moment, you just get through it. So I know, you come to a talk and just get through it. That's not my main advice, but it's more like taking the pressure off and giving you permission to say, it's okay to just get through it. I'm not teaching bad behavior. I'm not encouraging bad behavior. I can rely on the idea that this is not my child's first choice. I put it on my list, my assessment of wagging skills and unsolved problems. This problem is on the list, we will get to it, and we're just gonna do what we need to do in this moment right now. And it's okay, and things will go on. Does that help? It's okay if it doesn't, but keep going. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Another parent asks, what do you do when a child struggles to take no for an answer? And asks the other parent, hoping to get a different response. What about when they ask for something unrealistic, like a unicorn? It's hard not to feel like they are manipulating you to get what they want. How do you suggest I deal with that?
Tell me if this answers that. I think of it this way. If I wanted to label what I'm seeing, like going and asking the other parent, or continuing to ask, even though you said no, if I wanted to look at that and give it a label, okay, maybe I'd call it manipulation. Maybe I'd call it, coercion or something like that. But why do I need to do that? There's something that's creating that. There's a struggle. There's an expectation there. Hey, having a hard time taking like what one parent says as the answer without asking the other, right? That's the expectation, is just taking what one parent says as the answer, right? And so okay, I see this a lot. I'm gonna have to solve this because it's creating a problem here. For lack of an adaptive response, your kid's gonna be maladaptive. Your kid's gonna respond in ways that you could probably give all kinds of labels to. But it's that knowledge that you're resting on here. This is like kind of the factor that makes it different, is that I know for sure, 40 to 50 years of research, neurosciences tells me kids do not want to do this. That's not how they want to be. Given an opportunity to be a different way, they want to do that. And so, I'm not going to parent out of fear. I'm not going to parent in a way that makes it so that, oh gosh, I got to snuff that out, or whatever it is. It's, I see what's going on here. That's maladaptive. I got to give it a better way. I don't know. I'm not sure how to address the unicorn thing. I would call that a symptom, to be honest with you. I would kind of want to backtrack a little bit and look at, okay, so what's going on that's making this child think that a unicorn's possible? You know what I mean? That's probably where I do things with that type of.
So along with that same question, let's say that a child struggles to hear no when they're asking for dessert every night. They want a popsicle every night. How do we deal with that?
So you're going to want to get clear on what your expectation is. When is this child going to be able to anticipate a popsicle, and when are they not going to be able to anticipate a popsicle? And then you start solving it. So until you have this conversation, you're saying it happens every night? No, it's going to happen every night. So you're like, okay, I'm sick of it now. I probably need to clarify the expectation. Hey, you can have a popsicle every other night. That's what I'm saying. My expectation is you accept that a popsicle comes every other night. Give them a chance to meet it. If you clearly see, okay, that's the expectation I feel comfortable with, every other night, they still can't meet it, we're going to prioritize this because I can't take the popsicle conversation anymore. So then you're going to start the popsicle conversation. Hey, I'm having a hard time with dessert, except that you can't have a popsicle. What's going on? So the faster you get working on it, then the faster you're going to see it go away. Does that help?
Yeah. A parent asks, so let's say that a child is very persistent with what they ask for. When trying to tackle this, should we be global in the way that we have these discussions, or should we be more specific?
Perfect question. Absolutely. The more specific you are, the better these conversations are going to go. So if we use this very specific example, the child's going to have an easier time talking about it, first of all. They're going to be able to get to the bottom of the problem, and it could be different problems contributing to similar scenarios. So you want to make sure, yes, we start very specific. But then also, like the skills are transferable. And we just want to make sure that that we're just not assuming. Because if we assume, that we start to clump them together, if we start assuming, oh, having trouble with, when I say no, that's huge. You know what I mean? So definitely, that was a perfect question. Start as specific as possible, and then you can kind of draw on. So say you get a good solution into place for that very specific example. It could be that when you go to tackle, say, the next one, that it's every time we pass the park, they have to jump out and play, right? You can, in that conversation, tap into it. Hey, remember when we had to talk about the Mitchell's thing? Do you think anything from that solution you could pull into this once you get to that step? So you can kind of capitalize on the work that you're already doing. So it's definitely an investment.
A parent asks, how do you have transparency about trying this new method without giving them too much hope? How do we start this conversation?
I've never seen this not work when parents are dedicated, caretakers, teachers are dedicated to doing it. I've never seen it not work. So that's the good news. So I have a lot of hope. But until you see the success, I understand. It's hard to be like, oh, nothing's worked, so I don't know about this. But you get best results, the more hope you do give the child. So if you say something like, keep this in mind, be as humble as possible. It's really hard to sit with your child and apologize or say, I just haven't done it. I've had to do this so many times. I just haven't been doing this right. You know that? We get into this situation a lot, and every time we do, I respond this way, and then we don't get anywhere, and we're still dealing with it. We're gonna do it differently. Your concern is just as important as mine. In the past, we've not treated it that way. It's what I wanted you to do, or my concern was more important. We're not gonna do that anymore, because I want this to be easier for you. So I gotta get to the bottom of why this is hard for you, what's going on. We just have to talk about it. I know you might not want to. I'm frustrated at this point. I just need you to give me a chance. I mean, it's not the way we're used to talking to our kids at all, but it works. It's helpful. Some kids you don't need to go there. They're like, okay, I'll go along with it. But some kids are so skeptical because they're so used to these conversations and how they don't work. So as much as you need to go into it, it's fine, I think. You get a lot of credibility from kids whenever you acknowledge what they're thinking anyway, which is, you've been unreasonable, and I can't deal with you. I think that's what they're kind of thinking, so you get a long way with that, because it's kind of true. We do get kind of unreasonable when we get frustrated. I'm first to admit it. So, does that help?
We talked a lot about easing up when we see big behaviors. When you are saying to ease up, what if a child is being aggressive or hitting a sibling? How do we ease up and also keep people safe?
One, keep in mind, is anybody gonna die here? Like, is it, you know what I mean? I know that sounds extreme. But two, if you have this perspective already, it's likely not gonna get to that. It's likely that you would have eased off before it got to that. And if it's not, the more you do this and the better you get, the more you're gonna see, the heat's on, and I need to cool it down in here, because I see what happens. They start throwing and they start kicking. So it rarely helps to kind of like, this is such a generalization because every kid's different. I would say as much as you can stay away from kind of physically maneuvering a kid or imposing your will so directly, and it's just never going to solve a problem. So sometimes, I had a kid in my office the other day that was so angry at her mom that she was like biting heads off of these like little men, and like Playmobil men, and she was biting the heads off. And I was like, that's fine. Like, I don't need them. I don't care. I got them at Goodwill. You know what I mean? And she was so mad, and there was a pattern where her mom just would never let her talk about how she felt, and it felt so good. And I'm like, yeah, this is not the be-all end-all solution. This is not like, oh wow, and she's mad, it helps to let her bite heads off of toys. That's not going to be the solution. But right now, it's not hurting anything, and so I'm not going to say anything. I'm more like, wow, I feel so bad about how angry you are right now. Like, I could tell you've never done this before. And she stopped. It was pretty quick, because there was no expectation in that moment. I had no expectation. And it didn't last long. It was only a couple of them. It's fine. So, it's not, you'll probably start catching it a lot sooner. But when you don't, just think, what's the end of the world here? And again, health and safety, number one thing. So you need to physically, like, oh, I'm gonna pick you up and move you over here because you got a little baby brother, whatever. Just do it.
And our last question, a parent asks, what do you do when a child has a problem with lying? And it's hard to have a conversation and know whether or not your child is telling the truth.
So if you think of lying as a symptom, right, rather than a problem, the lying is going to go away. Because there are other things that it sounds like we're not sure yet are creating the lying. So if you have time to check out that assessment of lying skills and unsolved problems, it's going to guide you through kind of separating in your mind all the unsolved problems. I have a feeling as you go down through the skills and it jogs your brain a little bit about, okay, where do you run into problems? I have a feeling after you're done with your list, you could probably pick out, oh, I think these are the scenarios where it ends up being lying somehow. I don't know why exactly this child feels like they have to. You're going to talk to the child about it. You don't have to know yet. But I think that probably if you're sure you get all those unsolved problems down and they're in front of you and you're like, yep, this looks like the comprehensive list, no matter how big it is, when you start kind of checking them off the list as you work, with your child, the line's going to go away. So it seems to go against everything that we know about the kind of people that we want kids to be and raising kids. Like, oh my gosh, it's lying. I got to address this. But take the pressure off a little bit. Lying's a symptom. There's something that's causing the lying. So let's spend our valuable energy on what's causing the lying, and you should see it go away.